Hi, I'm Joseph Crudup, and welcome to my storybook. Today, this is the part 17 in this book called TD Dates Before You Do. Today, I'm going to read chapter 17 in this book. Chapter 17 Before You Fight. The most important of life's battles is the one we fight daily in the silent chambers of the soul. Sometimes the decision that prevents us from settling for less is a decision to fight for what matters most. While most of us don't participate in street fights or boardroom brawls, the decisions to fight may not be an option that you are allowing yourself when you should. On the other hand, some of us may have developing a defensive sense that prevents us from accepting what we need. This courage when to fight and when to let our defense down in calculus to military. All of us have inherited from our primary ancestors, and possibilities to defend our troop and club any threatening predator over the head. A great creator equally, even the most time amongst us with the adrenaline need to kick us into overdrive when the heat is on. This interesting flight or flight instances may be a burden to some, but major as well. For most of us, it can be a tremendous asset. We might ask ourselves whether our flight instincts have become more than refined since prehistory days. No longer are the dinosaurs threatening our existence, or are we hunt, bound to hunt and gather? However, we still see incredible violence used to export power with both individuals and entire nations. In insect civilizations, conflict between cultures was often resolved by the use of preliminary destruction. Entire villages were buried, the women raped, the spoilers divide, the children enslaved or murdered ruthlessness, ruthlessly, and black and Babylonian times. This practice prevailed in such dramatic examples as that of the Amalekites invading Zechariah 1 Samuel 20 verse 1 through 4. We are told that as David and his intolerance and surveillance of the damage, they left their devils and wept until they had no more power to weep. 1 Samuel 30 verse 4. When we fight, we must be willing to struggle for a solution that's larger than our own agenda. As brutal and blood crazed as war can be, aggression is not always a bad thing. Our funny instincts can be put to get loose. When we feel passionately enough about something to fight for it, then we are impraiseless is important to ourselves and those around us. Often we can channel our anger, frustration, or feelings or powerless into the fight of persistence, determination, and achievement, facing present injustice and resolving conflict. Recently, I took a position on the board of the Underground Railroad Freedom Center and its amazing measure in Cincinnati, Ohio, to have drawn attention to the often covered actuality that at least 30 million people remain enslaved around the world. One need not look back too far to find similar inhumanly in the bloody remains, springing up and down the streets, or whirling around, or dry premises, religions on agenda, or Rwanda, from South Africa to South America. Human blood is hiding just beneath the soil. Most of it shed needless despite the advancements for human civil rights. We still live in a scarcity while slaving of browns globally. I like that the museum leaves a look at our past to draw attention to the dope under the rug of our contemporary scholarship. Those who say we should not look back are often those who close their eyes to present injustice and living tales of self-indulgent endured deception. Today, terrorists and hate ground groups aside, most training national marines and the cultures of all times are moving away from torture, and rape to become slightly more serious in how we concord, conflict, and move on. The Geneva Conventions brought some seriously to the process we engage in resolving conflict. Organizations like the United Nations and necessary international create platforms for rules of engagement for conflict between nations. Still, though the time models Bayer has drawn raised eyebrows, research as it is suggesting that in spite of our professional activity, we may not be living up to the ideals that we saw other exposed. Overall, thought I would like to believe that we are attending to become more heinous, compassionate, and civil in resolving conflict. A great example in Mars is the true commissions that was assassinated in South Africa recently, as opposed to the revenge based bitterness of the past. This movement seeks to fracture community cases, and true understanding its founder was a cover to move forward by listening to its side's pain. Real truth isn't held in the pain of the one side, but also understanding the pain of the other. For example, you cannot stop domestic violence by threatening the victim if you are not going to reach out to help the perpetrator. The compassion for one doesn't neglect the need of the other. If we do not facilitate healing for both, then while you are building centers for the victim, then ignoring pain of the bruiser is reproducing itself as the lives of the others. While criticizing the garden, if you are not going to pull the weeds, then that threatening its survival. Fight back. Eventually, I was wrestling with some serious back pain after fighting through tremendous aches for the longest period of time. I decided to undergo surgery on my back. Little did I know that the solution would bring as much part as the problem. Often the process of getting well releases the executive soreness, but it is this very process that is necessary to heal the close pain. So there I found myself lying in a hospital bed with my back open up for 4 inches deep for the complete and intensive surgery. I awoke from an essentialist to find that I was going to need to fight the brutal sores trampling in my resulting muscle experience. I felt I felt like lies were whipping through my gut, my guts, and tights. It was it was torture to get up and walk on so many bruises and lacy muscles. But if I hoped to get well, I had to fight off the temptation to stay in the bed and then fight off the new pain of muscles that were in shock. Every time I tried to stand up, I wanted to whip enough from the shades of pain cutting through my muscles. My nose would jump around wildly inside of me not like hot popcorn. Recovering was it industrial as my previously denied that the pain had been, but the ends of one was different than the other. I knew I had I knew that I had to endure one interest pain by a pain if I ever hoped to overcome the coldest pain that threatened to This disabilitate me. This lesson holds true for all of us as we fight during tower. We must choose what to do after our engages of aggression. If we are going to heal my conflicts, we have to give up for needs for revenge, retaliation, and being right and fight for the greater good. But I must warn you, this show brings its own pain, and some people choose to repeat the injury rather than in the healing of forgiving and understanding each other's pain and fear. Clubbing your enemy in the head may bring a temporary gratification, but in the long run he will be back up again, and the war continues when the healing could have been underway. The art of fighting, the infinite wisdom. The good Lord did not correct us to be passionate and how like slugs under rocks involved in conflict. God gave us the gift of anger and the fruit of the understanding. Without our use of such tools, the main predators of our well-being will powerful our possessions, ransack our riches, and bleeding girls our southeasters. You have to fight to walk, to improve, to guarantee, to love, to live, to survive. But before you fight, you must think deeply to understand whether the spoils of the war justify the fight. If yes, stand up to the pain, not just your own, but the pain of all those involved. The innocent who may be hurt in the fight, and those against you, because you all try all you want. If you truly want to escape the hold your enemies have on you, you must understand their pain. One opening here is like scoring points in a pain game after the final buzzer rings. You aren't willing, only delaying the healing process. As you think through which fight to engage in and which to avoid, realize that some people are not as interested in results as they are in conflict. Too many times we are led by people who love to fight. They may be born with warm morals and hate battles, or they may even wear the comfort flannels or justice, but they don't want to find solution as much as they want to continue the battle. They don't love winning. They're in love with fighting. Many people seek justice, but their party is diluted by their associations with those who only seek drama. These concealers never give credit to the other side even when good is done because they love to fight more than the facts. Always waiting to be heard is a sign of not listening, and not conflict is resolved without listening to both sides. The truth of the matter is that some of us have fought so much over the years that we become stuck in fight mode. Even tenderly as we get older, We become such veterans at the art of fighting that, like old world heroes, we wake up in the night in defense more than attack. You and I have both heart of man who pulled lions on their rise, sleeping silently next to them in the bed because they heard thunder in the night and that it was gone for. They don't know, and there's such a Caucasus minds that venomous or the Korean War or wherever they fought has ended. This tragic condition comes to those who have remained shell shocking from real war, like in and post-tertiary state of endless alert. Big brother, I seen this fine percolating this morning this story in the life of my older brother. Eldest, it is a con. It is a con. Caring man, but has always been a father insensitivity when he isn't a bully at heart. Let's just say that he has had bullying tendencies. When he was younger, he would fight a pregnant gorilla or a rabbit or the rabbit rattlesnake just to show them who was in charge. To me, he was the original Crocodile Dundee. Now that we are older, he says fighting was involved militarily and doesn't have it, and the troubadours is too hot has to his early school days. Ernest went to school with children older than himself. He was blessed and cursed with the intellect and brightness that allowed him to graduate from high school at 15, surrounded by older peers who were threatened by his gift. You can only imagine that he dealt with it on a day-to-day basis, and to the fact that he was the part of that first group of black children to disagree disintegrate public education. And you can see why he thought fighting was a part of getting home from school every day. It didn't take long for his emotional stick shelf to get stuck in fight gear. Honest environment had provided him to protect himself. Then yeah, as is the case for many other siblings, his fight instinct was reformed as he sought to protect the rest of his family. Maybe your background was different, but many of us grew up in causing upsets that conditioned and fight promoting personality. Many of us come from cruises in communities where anger is a popular. Some of us were raised in a hood or inducted in cultivated by broader neighborhoods. This wasn't just in the white communities either. I knew some young white girls in West Virginia who would turn red faced, break beer bottles over their own heads, and split heavily while a snip out of their mouths, both getting in the mood for a bone crushing conflict. I've seen Dangle freelancers, professional and disengaged CEOs lose their cool and explode like a human grandmother during a Berkshire board meeting. My own sweet grandmother was trashed in the hospital when she thought she was being treated unfairly, and I was told it took several undinners to get her back in the bed and restore her usually calm, cooking bacon, itty little grandma this morning. My sisters were raised in individuals that applaud correct times, sharp attacks, and as Melvin response. Yes, I grew up around fighting women. I was unbiased, if not light threatening, when I was a kid, to ensure that my opponent couldn't fight because she was a girl. Most girls fought each other, but a few line ladies could deck a boy with extreme effectiveness leaving him dazed by the taste of blood and an bruised ego. These, these Amazons were fighting long before Lela Ali ever put on her first pair of boxing gloves. One day, when moving through the house, I'm glancing up at a window and took my shot saw an angry man snarling it back at me. I thought he must have been an attacker about to break in and destroy all that I had worked to intend. I, in unrestrained ways, I leaped with clenched fist to release an assault on him like you have never seen. As I struck the glass, I was shocked to hear it shatter and find it was not a window at all but a mirror I had hit. The angry guy who had the angry guy who I had seen was only a reflection of myself, staring back at me. Clearly, files transparently regarding race, age, and status. War and peace. Nations who rush to war are like people who rush to fight. They soon learn that what they lost is not worth what they gained. As body bags come quickly rolling down the ramps of the airplanes, one realizes that the cost of war is far more than the billions of dollars that we experience, which could feed the hungry and clothing the naked. The real cost of war is that the children who lost their parents, the parents who lost their children, and the man and woman who lost their spouses and siblings. This cost cannot be measured, but it can be questioned. These brave men and women who give their lives and fulfilling their duty to defend their country mean the ultimate sacrifice. We never waver from the deep application for the noble gift they self-essentially offering in the name of freedom. However, our gratitude becomes infusible with rage when we realize that they might have died because some trigger happy politicians with anger management issues didn't exhaust every possible method of religion. Too often leaders pay the bill for their authority with the bloodshed from those they serve. Nevertheless, amazing strides are being made among Kabbalah minds and more peaceful hearts. Just think of the recent highly targeted event that took place in North Korea. North Korea's hostility towards America is no secret from the Korean War until now, and long ago fog of anger and anti-imperialism has involved our international relationship. This is invaded in North Korea with slogans such as "Let's take revenge of desert times under U.S. imperial rules" on T-shirts and billboards. It's a fair cry from God bless the America. God bless the USA. Most of us wouldn't choose to spend a vacation in such as alkaline atmosphere. However, none of this determined the New York Federation from performing in Power Lane. In February 2008, the Philharmonic performed its melodious music with passion and precision languages in the atmosphere that many thought would be a nightmare experiences. Out of respect, the execution including both Korean music and American ballads in its repertoire. So right in the process of the music presentation, suspicious one and hostages is met like a glass is slowly dissolved into the seal sound. It is there one an amazing sense of conventions among those who have persevered each other with abandon that's been. No recommunications responses were passed in the ballroom. No denigration derived from some Captain Bell promotions and promotions and for trade. No, it was the soft sound of violence and an honest and respect for each other's culture and humanity that came through the music that night. It certainly cannot have been easy to build a bridge strong enough to engage both the North Koreans and the Americans in a peaceful exchange. Assistant Secretary of State Christopher Hill considered conversational for many party insiders. This administration, this minister has commitment to changing the mood in international affairs, like a DJ who turns down the flashing star lights and troubling tempo of the retail disco set and plays a soft ballad in a case in the clears of shadows. Here lives his trademark, the diplomacy, di- diplomacy and personating to get the New York Oscar on the career stage. A report in publications such as the Washington Post, the concept of reconciliation will not have occurred without his version for the coaching exchange. I was a part of the concept myself and felt deep in touch to see that there are intentional measures to this slash and burn way we tend to oppose conflict that might change the world. We need more people who can keep seeking peace even when there are old wars and old wounds. We need people like Christopher Hill to overcome the barriers and this contentment of those who find it easier to prepare judge to prejudge than to grow together and seek common ground. The sound of peace. Blessed and the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Matthew 5, verse 8 through 9. Sooner than later, most of us realize that we cannot resolve every conflict with our bravado and brass knuckles. We soon learn that real strength isn't changed in our process, but in our brains and ability to reach retaliate is and is not a pertinent response in any given situation. Now, to be sure, making peace isn't easy. Peacemakers had to work with great skills and deployment this naturally since they often experiences resistance from both sides. If we decide to seek middle areas, he, he who stands on the grounds, then I must warn you, if you decide to seek middle grounds, then I must warn you that there is no truth to the old adage. He who stands in the middle of the world gets hit by both sides. It's most easy to live in a friendliness and alienation than the dread of change that comes with reconciliation. In the interest of peace, we must learn to seek and to interact with people who think differently than we do. It doesn't mean that you have to change low words or low messages, but if you are hateful, it does mean you need to change low manhood. Much can be accomplished when we're willing to engage in real dialogue and rather than the sound bites of diamond report by the press. Many times we have demolished people who don't even know. I have for a long time thought that our nation would be better served if the church were more open to show love and not hostility. I am embarrassed by those who rush to divide them rather than to unite. If black people will want to will talk to white people, not shout, and white people will talk to black people as respected equals. A lot of weapons will be destroyed. If Democrats and Republicans will just speak to each other, they truly exchanging ideas, then there might be more opportunities to work together. It will be a better, more peaceful war, more peaceful war if Muslims and Jews, gays and straights will at least talk to each other rather than want dividing allies. We might learn something from each other that will leave us better off than we are apart. Crossing lines into territories where we risk resistance isn't easy for anyone. This is why the power of peacemakers, finding that we don't have the tone of war makers, is so critical to conflict resolutions. It is too lawfully a good goal to set all differences to harmonizing into one melting pot. But a realistic goal is, as Sally, a combined mixture, and the greatest each returning to its equilibrium flavor and textures. Recipe for place salad. Recipe for place salad. For peas salad. What does making a peas salad look like? Often I find that we responsible risk and emotional vulnerability are key ingredients. A few months ago, I was scheduled to fly to Venezuela for three speaking engagements. I had never been to this intelligent South Africa country, and I was looking forward to experiencing its equal and actually local food, culture, and imbalances. However, my team was having trouble getting the required government permit to land our plane there. The vessel has not been approved by the Venezuelan officials for us to enter the country. The American assembly, which was relying on so much for international travel, was scrupulous to say the least about encouraging our trip. On top of that, the American press was full of the ever increasing conflict between Venezuela and Colombia. If these two straits were if these two straits were not enough to determine my plans, then the fact that the White House had reportedly issued a statement that Venezuela was to be added to a list of countries suspect of having terrorists was seen to be worried was seen to worry out, reinforcing the danger. President Chavez seems less than encouraging in his remarks in response to the allegation. I provide this information only for contact. I do not presume to know that the government of Venezuela should be doing none of what our government's involvement in between the two countries. But these were the factors we were up against as the deadline looming for our deportation. Three times were told with cancellation of meetings and not going because I was unconcerned of what I was walking into. As in the case with most leaders, you have to consider not only your own safety, but most importantly, the well most importantly, the well-being of those who are with you. I had I had a team of several men who worked in various areas of conference with me. World wives and children were not appreciated without becoming prisoners of some conflict which we had been warned to avoid. Let the draught of danger not did not keep me from being drawn to this equalizing opportunities. In fact, the unknown may have been part of the attention. When I had never even met the apostle, Wa Evala, who was my host, my customers played tug of war with my concern. Still unexcited, we finally overcame the visa 102 days before our scheduled arrival, and receiving our irrequired laying permits at the last minute. I designed regulation into process with the trip, hunting by the ill feelings that seems to exist between our countries, and the stern warning for the American assembly, assembly, and eventually, which I had never ignored before in making my travel plans around the world. I decided not to bring along with my 13-year-old son, who was out on spring break. I had never to worry about with getting the adults on the crew in and out safety, with so many dynamites swarming around my destination. I knew he would be safer at home. So you may be wondering, why did I go? And what does this have to do with the putting together of a peace salad? Two reasons. I am a person who I am a person who really tries to keep his word. And I knew that organization of meeting with more than 15,000 lives attending is no small feat. I did not want to disappoint anymore. I always hated when people say that are coming and then do not follow through. While the Prussian monetary reasons were legitimate ones that most restless people will ultimately accept, I still don't back down easy, and without trying to over spiritually my decision. I truly felt the promotion of the Holy Spirit which overruled my caution and said to me, go anyway. Sometimes you have to listen to that inner voice of wisdom that God provides for those who seek Him and obey. But as we landed, I was very quiet. I can still hear my coworkers laughing and jesting as we often do on such trips. They were having fun and enjoying the moment. But for me, I found little consideration in lately. Frankly, I was in extremely concern. I, I did I do the right thing? I hope I don't live to regret my decision. We just had few of my thoughts as we approached the runway and prepared for our district. I heard the wheels drop down on the plane, and the usual sounds of flight preparations as we were coming in for a landing. I look out the window to the district riding on mountains surrounding the airport, and it amazes me, man, hiding up there, living in bush, England with M16 guns and sharp knives were to a dot as to make some politic statements about issues of which I know nothing. As the plane hit the ground, I wondered if we were not listening as missing Powelson or showed up on the next unsolved mysteries. I have versions of being incarcerated in a Venezuelan prison or being captured by insurgents and spending the next 10 months in a federal position somewhere inside a bamboo cage in the bush. It was filled. It was filled pool. It was filled pool and sleeping in that is often what has one people afraid of the other. I was soon to discover that that was my imagination conjoining about these forests. People was far more dangerous than reality. Often what you must realize before you fight is that the battle is more within than without. After landing in Colorless, I was looking everywhere and almost waiting on something or someone to come out and bite me. And then the front of the incredible gorgeous assessment of a 5'6" tall properly engineering man, who I will later learn was a person in valor. He is short of stature, but clearly a big man in the country. The movement I met him and his intolerance, intolerance I was in for in an ocean of blood and sea of tears. My fears and bases discovered as he explains that it had been his dream for 20 years to meet me and that I had preached them many messages. Unblessed announcements to me that changed his life, his senses, and a lot touching me deeply. My mother introduced me to Engineer Andrea, a friend who a friend who was with him, and explaining that he is in charge of the national treasure of Venezuela as well as a Christian. And I admitted no did not know either of these men well. I will look forward to getting to know them both better. Until then, I cannot deny that I was overwhelmed by their kindness and left me with a feeling of graduation that a gratitude that God had allowed us to experience what could be a new and abandoning relationship. If nothing else, it served as a great life lesson for me. I had never experienced a warm reception, and to have that so Lazarus displayed at a moment when I felt so vulnerable and out of my involvement and and out of my involvement was overwhelming. Our fight more importantly, and our flight plan disintegrated, and there on the spot two people from two different worlds found common ground. We all started weeping right there in the airport. I wasn't even sure why I was weeping. It might have been relief that I was not traveling with my teen eating rotten bananas in an amazing case. But I think I was crying to see what the love of God does to people and why we should always obey Him rather than accept even the most reasonable information that meets blanket statements about people. People are not their country, and still on topical ideas about any people can be quite dangerous in all fairness. I cannot attest to what your experiences will be if we should choose to visit Caucasus without the care and support that such invaluable host brings to the experiences the rest of my days. In Venezuela, only with foreigners, the fourth dynamic in culture, we ate the labelable South African cruisers. They like their meat, and it comes hot, 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 cutting it, singing Latino music, and several times I felt like a long lost family member being celebrated from his return. After Apostle Ivor invited me into his home and we ate together with his family, I was fascinated by their culture. The sense of the family was overwhelming and fulfilling. Similarly, the service that ensured were both powerful and life changing. The culture exchanges were interesting and not reformed by the revolutionary, fascination we had with each other. I had never felt so much love nor eaten so much delicious meat, and I had never seen um, people hunger for God's word that these people are. As our time thou as they time thou came to accuse the peace salad, the apostle Arvel so left an incredible pleasant taste in my mouth. The hospitality and love and experiences was a meal in itself. I shared with him, his gracious wife, his staff, and foreign pastors detail of my upcoming Megafest International in South Africa and how much it would mean to me if they could attend. Without hesitation, they asked for the details and place to come. It was a wonderful feeling to know that all of us were going to break past barriers and experience new connections with people whose cultures and ideals may be different from our own. Beneath the fears, the uncensoredly, and the unfamiliarly, we are all brothers and sisters in the most powerful way. I will see my new friends in only a few short months. I felt so privileged as I left that country. I look forward to having new experiences and overcoming fears and getting out of the box of perseverant ideals and into the vast space of open-minded, open-hearted willingness to evolve. I went daily in a fight that I would surely lose where the real battle was one of remaining open, fearless, and reception to the deeper comfort of me. Sometimes our expectations can be shaped not only by misperceptions and still misperceptions and stereotypes, but factoring information and sold data. No one at the State Department was trying to create preachers. They were simply doing their job. And yet, there are times when we must follow the example of Jesus and risk going when God leads us. If we leave our hearts open to if we leave our hearts open to the possibility of human connections and not rise barriers out of fear of our differences, then we can literally change the world we live in. Choosing the bells for the warfare to worship. In addition to learning from those who often rush to fight, which may also miss an opportunity to experience the very preservation for which we've been praying. My favorite example of this phenomenon of shooting first and aiming second occurs in the life of Joshua. Consider the following scene. And it came to pass, when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him and said unto him, Art thou for us, or for our adversaries? And he said, Now, by as captain of the host of the Lord, I am now come. Am I now come? And Joshua fell on his face to the earth, and they worshipped, and said unto him, What sent my Lord unto his servant? And the captain of the Lord's host and said unto Joshua, Loose thy shoe from off thy foot, for the place whereon shall stand is holy. And Joshua did so. Joshua 5 verse 13 through 15. A file of all his life, Joshua has made his line through his gift for combat. Think of him as Moses, Secretary of Defense. Now that Moses is dead, Joshua has assumed leadership and finds himself confronting someone he doesn't know. Instead of any kind of greatness, his immediate response is to ask, Are you for us or against us? Such a question carries on emotions on the tone as if he's prepared to fight at the drop of a hat. However, the only problem is that he's about to fight his God given help. When we think of peacemakers, let us not confine the truth that's true to public, social, or politics issues. Many of us struggle in our post-Russian relationships to recognize friends from foes. Sometimes when you are lose to bring attack, if you are not careful, you can fight. If you're not careful, you can fight the very one who has come into your life to help you. I cannot begin to tell you how many times I had seen people fight away the very ones who would have been a help to them if they had only let them. Because they lacked the ability to discuss when and where it was necessary to engage in conflict and when peaceful solutions were possible, they're missing the blessing God has sent their way. There is a big difference between being a coward and being a coward and being careful. God often sends us out in unlikely places or unsanctioned sources, but those who fight quickly often destroy the provision intended to achieve their opportunities. Such people don't often go on belong normally in advances because they lack the ability to draw strength from uncertain resources. God fed Elijah, though the mount of ravens. He may send you a friend who is like the good cemetery, someone of a different race and background. Sometimes past pain makes it difficult for you to accept currently carry. The struggle God has with Joshua is to get him to move from welfare to worship. God finally gets him to take off his shoes and move into a worship bowl. Worship requires openness, like love. It requires vulnerability. But when you see, but when you are training to respond to most issues by fighting, conflict seems like threatening, threatening than compassion. Maybe this is a time in your life to put away your sword and open your heart. Could it be possible that you are fighting those who could help you? Do you tend to ask, are you for me or against me? And immediately put those who want to help you on the defensive. I must warn you that sometimes divine help comes in an old uniform. In an old uniform. The next place or affection, an affirmation, an affirmation may not come backwards in the way you expected it. I am not against fighting. I had already shared that many times fights are a strength and a necessary part of life. But few of us choose our battles wisely. In this world, we all have to fight to get through the school, to overcome ills and adversities, to get ahead and achieve our dreams. Many are those who are diagnosed with cancer or some other dread disease who fight against the odds of at least an glowing and positive specialist and win the battle for life. To be sure, life presents challenges that require personal warfare to survive. But in order to channel our energy and resources into the right balance, we must exercise practice, wisdom, and faith in God's goodness. The next time your blood pressure escalates and your temples flare, the next time the next time you dismiss someone's offer or have insurance, ensuring that finding a solution is a lost cause because of the history of their hostility. I hope you will explain me the loyalties before you fight. Sometimes we must fight our own injustices rather than those around us. We must look carefully to realize who we're fighting. Maybe we are fighting the wrong way. Maybe the fight you must win is not external, but an inner one that will give you the Grail of Liberty. If you think about the bell, if you think about the true bell before you do. That's the end of this chapter 17. Tomorrow, we're going to have chapter 18 before you take flight on page 1, Saturday, page 271. Sorry, 271. Until then, this is Joseph Crudup. I will be seeing you tomorrow. Until then, take care and God bless.